Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Media Coffee. In this series, we interview journalists from leading media organizations in big markets globally to answer some of our clients' top questions on how to best communicate with the media. Media Coffee is hosted by Cision, a global provider of earned media software and services for PR agencies and comms professionals. If you would like to know more about our services, please visit our website, send us an email, or follow us on social media. I'm happy to welcome Chris Seper in this episode. He is the Vice President and General Manager of NewsNation Digital, a US-based media outlet and owned by Nexstar Media Group. Welcome, Chris. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here as well.
You are our first guest from the US, exciting. Could you please just start by giving us a bit of information about your background?
Sure. So I'm a lifelong journalist. I started in print as a reporter, I was a reporter in everywhere from Cleveland, Ohio, in the Midwest United States, to Philadelphia, and I spent a couple years overseas in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, as a reporter and foreign correspondent there as well. At one point in my career, I left print to do my own digital startup, which was focused on the healthcare space. It's called MedCity News. After doing that for about 6 years, it was acquired by a company named Breaking Media, which is a digital B2B publisher based in New York that covers everything now from healthcare to fashion to law and beyond. I transitioned after doing my print career and my digital career. I moved over into broadcast. I worked for a company called EW Scripps. They're most known for the spelling bee all over the world, but in the United States, they're also they're one of the top 5 largest owners of television stations in the country. After working there for a period of time, overseeing a part of the Scripps region, I joined NewsNation. NewsNation is a new upstart cable outlet, similar to what you'd see on CNN, Fox, or MSNBC, if you're familiar with those. But our goal is to be a little bit different, to focus on facts and a non-biased, multiple perspectives kind of broadcast and digital outlet that really tries to reach people who want the whole story, versus what you see a lot in the United States, where you have basically a cable outlet talking to one part of the country instead of all of it ideologically. I'm responsible for the digital side of this. I'm responsible for our website, social media platforms, our app, over the top like Roku and other things, both from making sure that our content is on point, but also making sure that I meet certain revenue goals.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for the brief. So NewsNation, as I understand, is part of Nexstar Media Group. I wanted to, if it's possible, if you can just tell us a little bit about the group and the different divisions within this group.
Absolutely. So yes, NewsNation is one sliver of Nexstar. Nexstar is a broad, multi-billion-dollar broadcast and publisher in the United States. Overall, I think there are about 200 local television stations across the United States that Nexstar manages. In addition, it is a vibrant digital publisher. It has The Hill, which in the United States is one of the most important political online news sites in the country. It also has a site called Best Reviews. Best Reviews is where it will review products for consumers so they can make better decisions about the things that they buy. And so it's a site that, and we also own radio stations all over the country, including WGN-TV, which is based in Chicago in the middle of the United States. We are either digital, radio, or television. And television, you can find us over the air through an antenna or through cable like NewsNation.
Oh, okay. Absolutely. Great to know. Thank you. I think one of the common questions that we get is that, a lot of people want to know, or clients want to know, how do people consume news in the US?
So, it probably fits what most people are doing today. This is a digital first world. I think the general rule for an American news consumer is they want their news when they want it, and then they want it how they want it, and they want it in the platform that they just happen to be on. So, this is a very social media first world in the United States. There's a lot of subscriptions to digital publications, and then obviously they'll consume it through broadcast on air. Often, even though the ratings points are often shrinking in the United States, still a significant number of people get their news through television. So, but really, we're a digital first world, social media and web and email and other things, and then on air. I think print, I think, is stabilized in the United States, where people are finding value in specific publications. But I think now it's coming in third as far as what is consumed.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Obviously within Cisions, and one of the services that we provide here at Cision is press releases distribution. So what's the attitude in the US around press releases?
So, I've been a reporter. I was a reporter, it's been 30 years. And I think the one attitude about press releases for journalists and media outlets is the same, right? They're annoying until we need them, right? Obviously, and I think probably a lot of people who are at agencies that are probably clients of yours or others that have dealt with this probably feel that, have gotten that from reporters, right? If the press release isn't necessary and in that moment, it's a bother, right? But if it's something they need or a story they're pursuing, they become ravenous. And I think that's always going to be the case. I do think, though, that there's been a little bit of an evolution around press releases in a few places. I actually think more and more there is a misinformation role for press releases. And I think particularly from reputable agencies, reputable organizations, that in some ways a press release or an announcement or something coming from in a press release form from a reputable organization is a little bit of a confirmation that what you were chasing is legitimate. There is so much misinformation out there now. There's also a challenge of media literacy in some of these new social platforms, even for journalists, that trying to confirm something is correct. Press releases often play a role there now. I think more tangibly, a lot of the basic rules still apply, right? So, I think just tight intro pitches for press releases are crucial. As you can imagine, at NewsNation, it's hundreds of press releases a day. A quick top of why it matters, even if it's a general press release, a little bit of focus for that brand. If you really, pick that brand, that media outlet as a top target, is extremely helpful. Relevant links, media reels, recent media coverage if you're trying to pitch a guest or somebody for a one-on-one interview. And then if there has been interest, hopefully there's a follow-up. If somebody's interested in the press release, is there an FAQ or is there other additional information that can also work as a quick handout? So I would say this, I think the utility of a press release kind of has diversified because of misinformation. But again, those fundamentals and you're always going to get that reporter's attitude around press releases.
Yeah, no, that's great that you've actually mentioned this, and you kind of answered one of the questions that I had as well, and it links as well to what you said earlier about NewsNation and NewsNation focusing on facts. So the question was basically, how do you verify the accuracy of press releases? How do we fight misinformation? So as you mentioned, having a press release for a well-known organization or company, that's one side. But are there any other ways to basically verify press releases and the information in them?
Well, I would say this. I think it's even gotten harder to discern sometimes a press release from news because media relations folks have gotten that much better at it. I was at a media outlet a few years ago, because you'll send out a video press release, and I think it was Amazon, and they, of course, you're hiring more journalists who are interested in joining public relations. They sent a completed television package from Amazon, and a few stations just ran it because they actually thought it was a television package syndicated, not something from Amazon's press department. So I think that vetting something. Well, I think number one, it's always going to be on the media outlet to vet that it's real, to have a follow-up conversation. And I think after an era of kind of hyper trying to get things on first to game search engines and social media, there is a little bit more of people taking a breath to make that extra phone call, which is really important. But I just think it's a simple matter of a check, and I think a press release can do what I think more media is doing, which is a link to cite some sources, right? And it can be, and I think too, almost like Wikipedia, right, where you might have a press release, you have your person you've got to promote, but you do have to convince somebody it's real. And obviously, the phone number, the domain email, and maybe is it a link to the government statistics that you've used? Is it a link to other things? Obviously, everybody's got a story to tell and a perspective to tell. But that level of authenticity is crucial.
So when it comes to press releases, how do you prefer the format to be like? What kind of information do you want to see in a press release? And what are the important components in them, like videos, pictures, links, anything else?
That's a great question. I think for any press release, the goal should be to close us in the first couple of paragraphs at least. I don't think there's any other scenario. The press release can be much longer, and like I said, I think there's probably other follow-up material. But in the end, I think that everybody's time now has just become crunched, and our attention spans have been tighter. And so I think that piece, get us in 2 to 3 paragraphs, or good luck in getting us at all. After that, I do think anything that reinforces prominence, topicality, credibility. In the case of NewsNation, we're not just looking at writing you up as an authority. There might be a chance for an on-air. So we do want to see a link to video. We do want to see a link to a credible website that has a bio. We do want to see, anything that would let us dive deeper if we've gotten through the first few paragraphs and been closed. So I think length doesn't necessarily matter, but I do think what happens in those first 3 paragraphs matter. And again, that point of everybody is going to have to reinforce that they're real. Not just even probably even more your established clients. I think everybody feels this. There are just fewer people around who want the jobs we have. All of us are hiring people with less experience. There's a very good chance in some cases that you're going to hit somebody who is just not familiar, even with some of the most established brands. The reinforcement that you are a real entity through links, credible links to credible sites, and all those other things are just crucial. Or we'll move on.
So in terms of language used, and I'm specifically talking about English, for if you're targeting a US audience, do you prefer to, clients to specifically write in American English, or is, for example, British English or Australian English acceptable?
I think American English is probably going to be it. I think there's again, I want to go back to this issue of skepticism. And I think one of the fundamental things that is penetrating in the American public is look for signs that something might not be legitimate. And one of those things, is it written in clean English? Unfortunately, the bulk of America has only spoken American English. They don't speak a second language, and many of them might not even know the Queen's English or others that might be a little bit different. And so, I think American English to an American audience is going to knock out one of the barriers of skepticism, for sure. Now, it's not an issue, as you're pitching someone who's a guest to indicate, he's going to speak with an accent, English is a second language, or things like that. I think that's when the link to a reel or highlights of somebody who has spoken is going to be very helpful. But as far as the press release goes, American English, as often as possible, increases your odds of success.
Thank you. That's actually a very valuable information to know. So in terms of, again, I'm just focusing on press releases for now. I'm going to go back again to the podcast a little bit because I have a question about it. But when it comes to press releases, do you have within NewsNation someone scanning all press releases? Where do you source these press releases from? Sorry, answer the question, and then I'm going to ask you a follow-up one.
Everybody gets press releases at NewsNation. There are a couple of specific email addresses to which a lot of the press releases either go directly or are guided to that. And there's an array of people who are going to review those and check them out. But at NewsNation, you have the digital team, which has reporters and editors who will look at press releases that come in. We have our broadcast teammates. We have it's called the assignment desk that really receives a bulk of these. And then we actually have bookers, people who are actively pursuing guests to try and put them on air. They might even receive press releases. But then I will receive one even though I'm a general manager, and then the reporters will as well. It's a shotgun approach, but there are a couple of specific email addresses that they wind up going to.
And do you prefer to receive press releases in general, like from companies directly or from a well-established distribution agency?
We'll take it from either place. And I think, I think as long as we can discern that company, then I would take it from that company. If it's a small startup and it's, if you're worried, again, hopefully any good journalist is going to go a few layers beyond the press release to confirm who the person is. Whichever you think lends more credibility is the source where that press release should come from.
One of the questions that I think most of the clients ask this question: when is the best time to send a press release?
That's a great question. And the answer is in our moment of need. But I think, I will tell you, and I think that let me digress a little bit here. I do think the challenge too about hope. I'm a little hopeful here in a new era is media outlets are trying to be more differentiated. Everybody has to cover a certain group of topics. Right now we've got issues with the American president, and everybody is writing about those. But media outlets want to be different. They want to be unique. They want to deliver a certain value that sets them apart. And because of that, they also look to certain topics, or they have different schedules. So know that I don't think there's a perfect answer for that. I think Fridays are bad, right? That's the document dump day. I think that, for NewsNation, I know that we have an editorial meeting at 9:30 in the morning. Sometimes if something comes hot off the press between 8 a.m. and 9, that's probably a great time to send it to us. Also, Mondays are tough to fill, and I know that we have planning meetings that happen right around 5 p.m. on Sunday. Even though that's a slow day, that time in between there, I don't think it is that moment of need. And I think topicality, right? If you see something that is bubbling up, that's an issue, and you think you can deliver a distinct, and look, we know that obviously press releases will go out to many people. I think there is a bit of urgency to be ready around certain topics and get them into people's hands. In that moment of need, that's good. So it isn't a specific time, but it's a specific speed, let's say.
And would you say it's a good idea to send press releases during public holidays or weekends, for example?
I just gave the Sunday example of the 5 p.m. meeting, but typically the staffs are very short staffed, and so it can arrive, but you run the risk of it being at the bottom of the pile, or you have fewer people to do it. So typically, I would not. There are those moments where you might want to take a shot, but our weekend staff is significantly smaller. Here's the flip side argument to that, though. News is also slower on the weekends. So if you have something, and I would say, and this is probably a little off topic, I think sending a press release on a weekend might make it difficult. I will know that weekend events sometimes have a higher opportunity for success. My digital team, for example, we have 2 reporters who are dedicated to writing about solutions to America's biggest problems. And someone sent us a company that has developed a technology to extend the life of food products, perishable food. That's an important solution for people, not only in money saving, but obviously in hunger. That was on a weekend. We were freed up to go and do something on that because it happened on a weekend. So, sometimes weekend events can break through. Press releases on the weekends are more difficult.
Absolutely, that makes sense, actually. So in terms of follow-up from companies or PR professionals, how would you like them to follow up with you or with journalists in general after sending a press release?
Well, I think number one, developing a relationship with someone, every media outlet, even if you wind up having like a long call list, is really important. So I think that's the person you would want to follow up on. I think choosing your battles on press releases is important, particularly if you're sending out a volume of press releases. You get lost in the noise, or you become that annoying PR person if every single time you send out a press release, you follow up. So I do think developing a relationship and choosing your moments on a phone call is very important. But then generally, I think if you think you have a shot, I think sending out that email, I think sending out a follow-up email, checking on if they received it, if they have any questions, and then if you really think they're a target, then really a phone call after that. I think that's the thing I would always do, and that's what I would go after. I think this is kind of a manufacturing line process.
Absolutely. And then, so you've worked as a journalist for a long time. What are the common mistakes that you see people make when in press releases or PR professional make in general?
Obviously, I think there are more media outlets than ever before, which means the pressure to touch every media outlet to increase your chances are great. But this issue of differentiation comes in. I do think that a little personalization goes a long way. And that could be easily in the subject line or in a quick personal email. And obviously, that's not going to happen for the thousands of media outlets that you're going to reach out to. But if there is a chance, if there is for a moment, hey, we know NewsNation focuses a lot on coverage of the U.S.-Mexico border. When it comes to those stories, we want to go after them. Some personalization really goes a long way. I think that zero knowledge of the media outlet. Obviously, I think again, it's a massive world out there. But if you've gotten that nibble, be prepared to know a little bit about the media outlet when you go out there. And then I think, I think transparency again. Look, I was once asked, like, what does somebody need to understand about a PR professional? I say, well, they have two jobs: give you information and keep you from information. And that's the journalist's public relations professional relationship. It really is. But I do think persistent transparency and candor. I've never had an issue with a PR professional who simply said, that's not a question we're going to answer, or we can't answer that question. But I have had a problem if it's evasive. I just think that our most valuable assets on both sides of the aisle are time. Mm-hmm. And so anybody who wastes time really drops in the rankings, so to speak.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So I wanted to go back again to the topic of broadcast. Are there any differences when it comes to targeting broadcast media versus digital, for example?
I do. I think the number one thing is, are you good on TV? Is the person, they want, a lot of places now are looking for guests and are looking for distinct guests, right? And I think the first question I get, because some of my digital team winds up on air doing talkbacks and debriefs, the first question that my broadcast teammates ask, is that person good on TV? And I think, so that really, if you're pitching, a university professor who has not been media trained and whose average, time to answer one question is 7 minutes, that's not someone who's going to make air, right? And so I think the number one thing is, no matter how much information someone has, unless it is a elected official, do they understand the delivery? Not to speak in sound bites or to overhype things, but simply to have that polish and engagement that would make them good on television. That's the number one difference. That is not as big of an issue for, obviously a digital reporter who might be writing a traditional news story or will have time to clip something for social media. But on air, they might want to take someone live and they might want to take somebody for 3 to 7 minutes. That person better be ready to speak in a way that's going to be engaging for that audience. And I think the other important thing, when I'm going to call these dual media outlets. So remember, when you've got a broadcast media outlet with a strong digital presence like NewsNation has, or print, or radio, or whatever, if you get that person on air, you're likely going to get them online. So sometimes, even though I think digital will sometimes pursue sources on their own as part of it. If you get a guest, if you get somebody booked on a cable television station, that clip is going to wind up on YouTube. There might be a write-up on their site. It'll be circulated through social. So there is obviously a bigger hit there. And I guess I think the last thing is, can this person bring something different that isn't going to be said by the 1,600 other different authorities in that space? And for some media outlets, that has meant polarizing language, right? So if you wanted to go to a Fox or a CNN, for NewsNation, it's really about a blunt, fact-based. We don't try to play to the polls, but we try to have candid conversations with differentiated opinions.
Yeah, thank you. So if a PR professional wants to secure coverage for their clients in a broadcast media, what do they need to do? What does that pitch email need to include?
So I think the consensus from producers and bookers, I think, is an email with a short pitch is the best bet. And I think that what we talked about before, relevant links, a media reel for the expert, recent media coverage, that idea that are they good on TV and are they actually an authority? And also, typically this is going to be on a topical topic. So please, what is the breaking news story this expert or guest can weigh in on? I think that's some of the basics there. I think for press releases, again, it comes in handy if you're releasing a poll or survey results, or if you're making a major announcement. Those are all very helpful. The release would still have to have some kind of intro pitch so that the television bookers are going to know why it would be relevant for the shows. If it's the new head of Facebook's AI division, obviously that's going to be a pretty easy layup, right? But some other details about, again, you're really being a focused pitch. And I would say this, kind of what I said about knowing the media outlet, you might want to pitch a specific show, right? And NewsNation Morning in America is very different than NewsNation's Rush Hour show, than the Dan Abrams live show, or Ashley Banfield, right? And so maybe pitching specific shows, or even saying in your pitch, I think this would be great for this show and that show because X, right? And I think finally, press releases and FAQs work best after you've secured a booking. So maybe you've booked this guest, you've got them, then you talked about length, then bring more information.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for all the information that you provided. I have my last question is basically, do you have any last recommendations for clients, PR professionals?
I said something earlier about definitely speaking American English because of sometimes the challenge. But I do think the world is getting smaller. I think there is more openness now to overseas guests on topical issues than ever before. We've done this regularly. We welcome it. While there are challenges unique to the American market for very American reasons, I do think there is more interest and openness for authoritative, credible guests, no matter where they are, that can bring differentiation and insight. That's definitely a priority. So I hope, I don't want to discourage. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that in our coverage.